21st Platoon. Hard drop. Secure our landing zone.
Understood.
Over the target in 5.
Hang on to your helmet.
Alright recruits, welcome back to From ODST to Helldiver. Today, in this video, we are going to go over armors in the game. Now armors is a pretty important selection to make when you enter a mission. And as much as I would like to say that I have unlocked all of the armors in the game, I know that that's not true. If we take a look here at the war bonds, I'm sure even in Servants of Freedom, I don't have the IE-12 Righteous. If we go to the next war bond, Urban Legends, I'm sure I don't have one of these. The SR-18 Roadblock, as well as the helmet. We're not going to get into helmets and capes as they are mostly cosmetic. But unfortunately, I don't have all of the armors unlocked. It's going to take quite a bit more grinding on my end to get those. So we are going to take a little hop over to the wiki page for Helldivers 2, and I will break down all of the different armor passives as well as the differences in the armors. And hopefully that's going to be a more thorough list than me showing you in-game what kind of armors I have access to. I only picked the ones that I was going to use, which means what I'd be showing you is my personal preferences of what's good, and as well as maybe I couldn't afford to get something over something else, and maybe it is better, but I chose something else instead. So, anyways, with that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and hop over to the wiki right now. Alright guys, we are on the Helldivers wiki right here. This covers both Helldivers 1 and 2, so just keep in mind when you're looking at this website, you can choose between Helldivers 1 and Helldivers 2. Make sure you're picking Helldivers 2 to get accurate information about this game. And as a bonus, I'm going to leave a link in the description down below so you guys can check out the Helldivers wiki. This has a ton of information. It's generally up to date, though this game gets several updates all the time, so it may be slightly outdated, at least for a little bit, whenever there's a new update. Keep that all in mind. And with that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at the armors here. So as you can see, we have it organized by light, medium, and heavy. And as is the standard for light armor, you can see we have a 50 armor, 550 speed, 125 stamina. Now there are armors like the Infiltrator that vary from that a little bit. It's kind of a mix between light and medium armor as far as the stats are concerned. And you can see all of these different passives that all of these armors have. Now, I'm going to dive into the armor passives as well, but just know in general, all of the passives that you see are going to appear on both all light, medium, and heavy armor. So, in general, just know light armor has this general stat spread. You're going to move faster, but you take twice the damage, and you can run a lot longer as well due to the stamina. That is kind of the idea of light armor. And you can see there are several sets of armor, so my apologies that I don't have all of them unlocked. I found the passives I like. I stuck with those. We move on to the medium armor. You can see here we have the general stat spread of medium armor, which is 100 armor, 500 speed, and 100 stamina. This is the default settings for you. So you'll take 100% of damage. You're going to move as fast as normal. and you have a normal amount of stamina. Now there are these armors here that are showing you extra padding, where they generally have the same stats, but they have an extra 50 armor. Same thing can be seen in light armor. I just didn't have them at the top here. But just know this is abnormal because of the passive, not just because these armors are a bit different. If we scroll down here, there may be some medium armor like the B24 Enforcer that is slightly different from the normal setup. It's some mix between medium and heavy armor, which is kind of neat. It's got 129 armor, 471 speed, and the 71 stamina, so some hybrid between the two. And that may be the only one. Let me just scroll down and check. So according to this, that is the only one. Again, this could be slightly outdated. And then we can see the normal stat spread for heavy armor. So we have a 150 armor, 450 speed, and 50 stamina. You're going to move slower, and you're going to be able to run for half as much as normal. But the trade-off there is that you have a 150 armor rating. You're going to eat hits a lot better. Now, you can see down here, there's this extra padding thing right here that increases the armor by 50, so that stat is a little bit increased. If we scroll down here, I don't think there's going to be any hybrid armor ratings. Yep, there's not. Okay, with that out of the way, I'm now going to go ahead and start covering the passives, because in general, what you really need to know about the armors is that they follow the light, medium, or heavy, or occasionally have some in between. Not commonly, though. Most of the armor stick very true to the light, medium, or heavy armor stat spread. What's really important about your armor selection, I think almost more than the light, medium, or heavy, is the armor passives. Different armor passives can unlock new strategical advantages and new opportunities for your build. For instance, the fire resistance makes it more likely for you to be able to survive your own flamethrower in case anything bad happens. Sometimes when you light something on fire, it walks up to you and touches you, and then you light on fire. There's also that primary weapon that can overheat and start burning you. You can have a passive that makes you resistant to gas damage, so you can walk through your own gas grenades or gas mines, or your sterilizer won't hurt you, things like that. Very good. So let's go ahead and dive on in here and cover these passives and how useful they are. So first up is the Advanced Filtration, which gives you 80% resistance to gas damage and effects. This can be a very good armor if you are particularly running gas grenades and perhaps the guard dog breath that shoots out the gas attacks from your backpack. I know when I play, sometimes it occasionally hits me with the gas, which really sucks. When you get hit with gas attacks, you don't go blind and crazy, it's just the enemies that do. Instead, you just start taking a lot of damage over time. So the advanced filtration is pretty good. If you have an entire team dead set on using gas attacks, this could be very, very useful. But you'd probably want to talk to your teammates about that if you want to go into one of those themes. Now, I do think that all the armors that include the advanced filtration are tucked behind a specific war bond that has a bunch of the gas type things. So keep that in mind. It's probably not something you'll encounter for a while or be capable of having access to, but it is pretty fun if you have a team full of people with the gas grenades and gas guard dogs mowing through enemies through the fog. Pretty fun. Next up, we have the Democracy Protects, and I might have this wrong, but I think that's the default passive for your first set of armor, which is medium. It gives you a 50% chance to just not die if you would take damage that would kill you, and it also prevents all damage from bleeding if you have a chest wound. Now, both of those are pretty interesting. I think the chest wound, a lot of people sleep on. Most of the time, the strategy is to not get hit, but in a lot of scenarios, you are just going to get hit, and not bleeding out from a chest wound is pretty good, especially in consideration of the other part of the passive, which is 50% chance to not die when taking lethal damage. Now, it is phenomenal to get a coin flip every time something horrible especially happens. One of those horrible things that's really funny to watch when you do this is when you set off a nuke or, any other giant airstrike or something that, no one should be surviving, and then poof, everything around you is dead and you're just standing there. That is a great feeling. Unfortunately, it's pretty inconsistent at a 50% chance rate. I have seen people roll the dice and survive a couple of different hits back to back, but there is one giant downside to this, and it's damage over time, which is why the not bleeding out is so good. If you get lowered to barely any hit points left, and then, for instance, you are lit on fire, every like 0.5 seconds, you're going to have to roll a dice to see if you live, and you're probably not going to. So, it has its downsides, but it also has some very heroic moments where you set off a hell bomb and survive it. So, it can be really funny. It can also be really good. I'm not trying to make it to where I don't want it to sound like that's a very horrible thing. It's just a little inconsistent, and I think the other armors um, pass that up with consistency. You may have a different take on that, and I think you have every right to. I think that the 50% chance not to die is actually fantastic. I don't think it's bad. I just think it's a little inconsistent. Next up, we have the electrical conduit. And this gives you a whopping massive 95% resistance to arc damage. And arc damage is anything that does lightning. Now, if you're fighting the Illuminate, they actually have a lot of ways to do lightning damage to you, and taking this armor passive against them is actually pretty good. But where this armor passive really shines is when you have some specific electrical things going on. There's an electrical turret that basically summons a tower that zaps everything nearby. It does not distinguish between friend and foe. So it will zap you, and if you have this passive, it does almost no damage to you and can hit you while you're in there and bounce off of you and strike other things nearby. And if you're fighting something like the Terminids or the zombies from the Illuminate, they will all run towards you to get some kills, and the electric shock tower will deal with them pretty quickly while you're just standing there. So this can be very good against particular enemies and very good depending on what you have, but where it really, really shines is when your teammates have the electric shock weapons. So the little bit of a conundrum with the electric shock weapons is electricity is fickle, and it kind of does whatever it wants, and a lot of the electrical things will hit an enemy and then fork off of that enemy to a random enemy nearby. It doesn't care if that enemy is your teammate. It just bounces to the next thing, which means there's a lot of ways to kill your teammates with the electrical arsenal that we have at our disposal. If you notice that your teammates are packing a few things in particular you may want to gear up with this just to not get killed by them by accident. An entire team using lightning is pretty cool as well. So very thematic and very cool. Can be extremely useful. This is one of the best armor passives. Next up, we have the Engineering Kit passive. It reduces recoil when crouched and prone by 30%, which is pretty noticeable, I think. I know a lot of people don't care so much about recoil and deal with it whatever, but it is pretty noticeable in a game like this where the weapons are a bit chaotic on the stability front. But the biggest part of the engineering kit by far is the extra holding capacity of throwables by 2. And I say that because something like the thermite grenade that only starts with 3 grenades suddenly starts with 5. You can do a lot with 5 thermites compared to 3. You can do a lot with the 6 gas grenades instead of 4, and the 7 frag grenades instead of 5. I typically, if I'm not going for a theme build, this is my go-to passive armor, just because getting those extra gas grenades is very, very good. It means I can solo a bunch of bug nest or automaton factories. I have a huge arsenal to throw at my enemies to confuse them, and I can do a lot of things solo that I otherwise could not. So I really do like the engineering kit. Don't sleep on those extra 2 grenades. It's a very good passive. Next up is perhaps a boring one, but a very, very good one. The extra padding. This is the extra armor rating passive. It doesn't have anything else. It just makes it to where you have extra armor. So if you're wearing light armor, you get the benefits of the movement speed, but the armor of medium armor. And this can be phenomenal as well. It just isn't very flashy. You can also wear medium armor with the benefits of medium armor, but the armor rating of heavy. Or you can have heavy armor to the max. All of these scenarios are amazing. The extra padding is always a good passive, no matter what happens. It can also be a deterrent for the effects of walking into your own gas and things like that. Can be comparable to taking the 80% less. It is not going to match 80% less, but it will provide extra defenses outside of that particular thing that you're trying to avoid taking damage from. So just keep in mind, it's not very specific on what it does. It's very broad that you just have more health, but more health means more fighting, and it's always really good. Next up, we have the Fortified passive. Reduce the recoil when crouching and prone by 30%. We've seen that before. That's a pretty decent passive. It's especially noticeable if you have like a heavy machine gun, things like that. But it also gives you, and this is the best part of it, 50% resistance to explosive damage. In particular, I find this armor to be my go-to armor if I'm facing the automatons. There are several things in their arsenal that will blow up in your face and send you ragdolling across the world. There are landmines that they have mortar emplacements, they have giant turrets that shoot bombs at you, they've got things that shoot a bunch of grenades at you and stuff, and it's just all around really good to take half damage from explosions. So if you find yourself dying, especially to explosions against the automatons, this is a fantastic armor passive. Or if you're killing yourself with your own explosives. The other thing to note is this is a very good armor passive if you are deciding to go into the game with 4 different mines. If you're doing the all mines arsenal, this is a great passive as well. You can step on your own mines and not basically instantly die. Okay, Next armor passive up is the Inflammable, which gives you a 75% resistance to fire. This is fairly decent. If you're going to do any kind of flamethrower build, you probably want this just to make sure that you are safe and secure. You also probably want to alert your teammates if you're going to go in with a flamethrower, because it absolutely can do a lot of friendly fire. This is also really good if you notice that your teammates are calling in flamethrowers or flamethrower turrets or have the incendiary grenades, yada yada yada. It's a very good armor passive. It pairs really well with a specific build in mind. If you're causing a lot of fire all over the place, the chances of you accidentally stepping in it go up quite a bit. And I do like the fire builds. Next passive that we have is the Med Kit. And what this does is it increases your holding capacity of stims by 2. So when you're fully stocked, you have 6 stim packs instead of 4, which is a 50% increase and is arguably possibly better than having an extra 50 armor. You get to survive quite a bit longer if you survive the initial hit, and it also increases the stim effect duration by 2 seconds. This is a very, very strong passive to have. Having access to 6 stims, and instead of the stim healing you for only 2 seconds, it seems to heal you for double that length. So it is extremely good. It makes you very, very survivable and is an excellent passive if you are going to go around being a medic, because the stim effect duration by 2 seconds also applies to the stims you shoot at teammates. So if you're doing a medic, the med kit is phenomenal. There's also a booster that goes really, really well with this also, but we'll get into that when we get to the boosters video, which is next up. So moving along, we have the Peak Physique passive, and this is one of the best passives for playing a unique build. And that's because of the very first part, which is increase melee damage by 100%. This allows you to one-shot most basic enemies with any kind of melee weapon, including the flag support weapon, the bayonet at the end of 2 of the marksman rifles, or the secondary melee weapons. I suspect this also affects the throwing weapon, but I could be wrong about that. I'm not sure. But it also has a secondary that improves weapon handling with less drag on weapon movement. I don't see that passive coming up very often. Most people that end up picking the Peak Physique are doing this so that they can do extra melee damage. An extra 100% is really the best passive you can get when you're doing a melee build. I highly recommend you guys make an attempt at a melee build. It is certainly not the best, but it is very, very fun. It is very doable. I have an entire playlist devoted to me trying to take on missions until I fail. Anyways, moving on to the next passive is the Scout passive. I think this is one of the earliest passives you'll get access to if you follow along the default warbond. It has 2 effects. The first is when you place a marker on the map, that marker will do a radar scan every 2 seconds, and it will tell you if there are enemies in that location. What's very useful about this, especially, is if you're on a stealthy type of mission, you can ping different places on the map and know where all the enemies on the map are. Fantastic for planning out your routes. Additionally, it reduces the range at which enemies can detect the wearer by 30%. This turns you into a near ghost when you're in the match. I can't hype this up enough if you're trying to do a stealth playthrough. This is 100% the only armor for it. It is so good. It's very fun sneaking and skulking around the map. Okay, next up we have the servo assisted. It increases your throwing range by 30% and also improves limb health by 50%. I don't typically ever use this. I tend to, and this is my take on things, I have played the game long enough that I know how far I can throw things, and I know kind of what way to arc in order to get things to land where I want them to. And if I increase that range by 30%, it's going to throw me off a little bit. So this actually kind of seems like a negative to me almost, although I'm sure a lot of people out there have used this and like it. And the extra 50% limb health is okay, but I feel like I tend to use stims whenever I get below half health at least, and that's about when your limbs take damage anyways. So I don't see this armor passive being used very often, although I'm sure some people out there are using it. If you do, let me know, and if there's some extra neat thing I don't know about, please fill me in on that. I'm sure that this also affects the stratagem ordinances to do eagle air strikes and all that stuff too, which could be pretty neat maybe. Maybe I'll do some testing with this, but it hasn't been super impressive to me thus far. Next up, we have the unflinching passive. Helps prevent Helldivers from flinching when hit, provides a higher armor rating, and markers placed on the map will generate radar scans every 2 seconds. Now this is pretty good. It gives you an extra 25 armor, which is very good. You get flinch reduced by 95%, it looks like, which is pretty good. You don't think of a lot of things making you flinch, but when you are fighting against the automatons and they shoot at you, you are going to flinch quite a bit when you get hit. So this is pretty good, and I usually get extra armor against them anyway, so this is a fantastic thing against automatons in particular. It also generates the radar scans where you place markers on the map, which is also pretty good. Next up, we have the Siege Ready Armor passive, which increases the reload speed of primary weapons by 30% and increases ammo capacity of all weapons by 20%, except for weapons that have backpacks. So when it says weapons that have backpacks, it means something like the recoilless rifle support weapon, where there's an extra thing to put on your backpack in order to reload it. This is covering 5 different weapons. I think it's the recoilless rifle, the wasp, the spear, oh man, there's a little the autocannon, and then something else. Forgetting exactly what it is, but there are 5 different support weapons that happens with. And when it says it increases the ammo capacity, it doesn't mean that your magazine is going to be increased. It means you get extra backup magazines. So if you have a gun that has 30 bullets in a clip and then you swap and you only have 5 of those, you would then get an extra 1. That's pretty much how all this goes. It also, do not underestimate the reload speed increase by 30%. That can 100% save your life. This is my secondary go-to armor passive by default. I like going on little solo missions, and the biggest issue with that is running out of ammo, and this solves that issue. It also is really good to be able to reload a lot of the weapons, your primary weapons, by 30%. That is super, super good. All right. Next up is the acclimated armor passive. Now, I think this was part of a piece of armor that was exclusive to a partner between Helldivers 2 and Killzone. I have not seen this pop up in the store or in any war bonds, but it provides a 50% resistance to fire, gas, acid, and electric damage. This could be very, very good depending on your loadouts. I know that when I go in with a flamethrower, I like to have the guard dog breath as my backpack option so that I can confuse enemies and blind them while they're in the flames and they get double the tick damage. So I think this is a really good armor passive. Unfortunately, I don't have access to it. I missed out on that because I joined after the Killzone partnership was over, and I never got to see an armor with this passive. I'll keep an eye out, and maybe someone will fill us in the comments down below how to get access to this now, but I think, unfortunately, that time has passed. I just figured I'd cover it anyways. Next up, we have the integrated explosives, and this is a really, really good, funny armor passive. It's kind of bad in the sense that you only get to use it when you die, but it does also increase your number of throwables. So first up, we'll talk about the second one. You get an extra 2 throwables, and that is a huge, huge armor passive. I do really enjoy that. That is great. But the integrated explosives part is the armor will explode 1.5 seconds after you die. So if you run and charge into the enemy and you die, you will blow up in front of them. Now I will say the 1.5 seconds can be an issue if you have a bunch of teammates nearby, because once they kill you, they're likely to move on to the next enemy. This is also particularly not very effective against the bots because they aren't right next to your armor when you die. They tend to shoot you from a distance. This is really good against Terminids and can be quite useful against the Illuminate if you're swarmed by a bunch of zombies. So just keep this in mind. This is a very, very good explosion. We can see a little bit of this. Inner radius is 3 meters, outer radius is 7, and then there's a shock wave of 14 meters. Inner radius does 2,000 damage, and then for the next 4 meters it drops down from 2,000 to 0. The inner radius is anti-tank, so it can take down like a charger. The outer radius is heavy, so it's less likely to take down a charger. And the shock wave itself is anti-tank as well. So pretty good, very good stats here. Next passive that we have is the Gunslinger, which is focused entirely on your sidearms. So it increases the sidearm reload speed, increases your draw and holster speed for sidearms by 50%, and it reduces the recoil of your sidearm by 70%. Now, I do really like the idea of the Gunslinger passive. It's very thematic, very cool. My biggest issue is my favorite sidearm is the Ultimatum, and none of those passives are super great, other than maybe the reload speed. But even then, I don't typically use the Ultimatum and then use it again back to back, so that's not fantastic. But there are definitely some sidearms that are very good and can very much benefit from this. So if you find that you really like a sidearm, you want to experiment with some, or even if you just want to test with them, the Gunslinger is a fantastic armor passive for that. Now, there is the sidearm that has heavy penetration. That is a great one. It has rounds reload, so its typical downside is that it reloads very slowly. This turns that into a very good alternative primary weapon, but it still suffers from a low ammo capacity, which all the sidearms tend to do. So it is very good. It's just, I feel like the sidearms are pretty low capacity on ammo. Outside of that, this is fantastic. You can definitely offset this by having the supply pack backpack option, and then you're really set up nicely. Gunslinger's a lot of fun, guys. Should definitely try it out. Next up, we have the reinforced epaulates. Man. Increased reload speed of primary weapons by 30%, which is really good. And then we have a 50% chance to avoid a grievous limb injury. That's not a 50% chance to not die. That is just a 50% chance for your limbs to not get hurt. It's good. It's not the best, but it is really good. It'd be better if it was just less damage by 50%, but avoiding limb injury is also very good. Increased melee damage by 50% as well. So this is basically the second option for increasing your melee damage. I think the peak physique is much better at this job, but the benefits here is your reload speed to your primary weapon. So if your primary weapon is your main go-to and you just have a melee weapon as your backup, this is a decent enough armor passive. It's definitely a viable alternative for melee builds. It allows you to get a passive bonus to your primary weapon as well, so you can do some kind of hybrid build. And honestly, when it shows up on the armor looks pretty cool too. It's the armor that I have been showcasing in my videos so far that I've been wearing. So keep that in mind as well. It looks really good, and that's really the most important part about armor, don't you think? Yeah. Anyways, next up we have the ballistic padding armor passive. It gives you a plus 25 resistance to chest damage, plus 25% resistance to explosive damage, and prevents all damage from bleeding if your chest is hemorrhaging. So this is a nice little passive armor here. It has its uses. It definitely has its uses. The 25% resistance to chest damage means it's not likely that your chest is going to bleed out, and then you don't take damage when it does. It also gives you the 25% resistance to explosives, which is okay. It's not as good as the other passive that gives you resistance to explosives, though. So I find this to be one of those situations where the armor passive is lukewarm. It does a lot of things okay, but none of them really, really well. Okay. And then we have the latest to be introduced Adreno Defibrillator armor passive. This right here is a very, very unique armor passive. It gives you a one-time, short-lived resuscitation upon death, given that your body is still intact. So if you die, but you still have all your limbs, you're able to get back up for a little bit. It also increases your stim duration by 2 minutes, or 2 seconds, which is pretty good. And in addition, gives you a 50% resistance to arc damage. So 50% resistance to arc damage is okay, but you're still likely to die pretty quickly to any kind of lightning attack. And the stim duration increase is also very good, but the real winner and takeaway for this passive is the one-time free resurrection. Now, when you come back to life, you are bleeding and you will eventually die. You can offset this by taking stims, but I think it doesn't recover after you use stims. I think it just continues indefinitely until you do eventually die. But it is still a fantastic passive. It's very, very unique, very interesting, and a lot of fun to play with. Alright, I think that covers all of the armor passives here. Yep. So I hope you guys have learned a lot of things. You can see the different armors here if you take a look at the wiki. You can see kind of what they look like and then note what the passives are. It also tells you where to get them. It looks like this TR62 Knight is going to be available exclusively for the Xbox, which is pretty interesting. Very interesting that it already came out on here as coming on the Xbox store. Very good news for you guys. You can see some of these are exclusives on the Superstore. Some of these are in the default Helldivers Mobilize Warbond. We've got Steel Veterans, all sorts of stuff. You can look up where to get these and how much they cost, what their stats are, what they look like, and what their armor passive is. Hopefully you guys learned quite a bit from this little video and have a pretty useful link to look things up now. Alright, all of that out of the way, guys. I am going to go ahead and end the video now, and I will see you next time where we will do a deep dive into boosters. I will see you guys then. Good luck, recruits. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of From ODST to Helldiver. If you found any of the information in this video useful, please go ahead and leave a like. And if you have any questions about anything, you want some clarification, or maybe you want to sync up in-game, go ahead and leave a comment down below, and maybe I can add you. We can get a couple of games together. And if you want to see a couple of more videos like this, why don't you go ahead and subscribe? That would really, really be appreciated. And hopefully this video gets you guys a little bit more prepared for when this inevitably drops on the Xbox. I hope everybody watching sees so many similarities between the Helldivers and the ODSTs. They're pretty much doing all of the same things. And I do find this game is, without a doubt, one of the greatest Halo games in the last 10 years. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.